Nationalism is a really strong feeling. It brings people together and makes them want to fight for freedom. In India, nationalism was super important in our fight for independence from British rule. For a really long time, India was ruled by people from other countries. The British East India Company, which started as a trading company, slowly took control of large parts of India. By the 1800s, they were in charge. The British took advantage of India's resources and people. Indians weren't treated fairly in their own country. This unfairness caused nationalism to grow. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, everyone in India joined together against British rule. They all wanted to rule themselves and have a free India. The first ideas of Indian nationalism started in the late 1800s. The early nationalist movements in India were primarily focused on seeking reform and gaining more control within the British Empire. These movements were driven by a desire to improve the socio-political conditions of Indians under British rule. At first, the goal wasn't complete independence from British rule. Instead, these early nationalists aimed to secure greater autonomy and better governance. Despite this, these movements played a crucial role in shaping the national consciousness and identity of Indians. One of the first signs of Indian nationalism was the rise of socio-religious reform movements. These movements sought to address social issues and injustices within Indian society, laying the groundwork for a broader nationalistic sentiment. Leaders like Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Dayanand Saraswati emphasized the importance of societal change. They advocated for a return to the positive aspects of ancient Indian traditions while discarding outdated practices that hindered progress. Alongside social reform, there was a growing demand for political participation. People wanted a greater say in the governance of their country, which was largely controlled by the British. The formation of the Indian National Congress in 1885 marked a significant milestone. It provided a platform for educated Indians to voice their aspirations and grievances, and to discuss ways to achieve political and social reforms. The early leaders of the Congress, known as moderates, believed in peaceful methods and dialogue with the British authorities. They sought to achieve their goals through petitions, meetings, and discussions, rather than through confrontation. These early movements, though not massive in scale, were instrumental in igniting the spirit of nationalism in India. They laid the foundation for future struggles and movements that would eventually lead to India's independence. The year 1915 was a big turning point for Indian nationalism. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, a lawyer who had fought for Indian rights in South Africa, came back to India. Gandhi, who would later be called Mahatma, brought a new idea of non-violent resistance. Gandhi's idea, called Satyagraha, was all about truth, non-violence, and taking care of yourself. He believed you could overcome injustice not with fighting, but with truth and love. Satyagraha meant resisting unfair laws peacefully, like through civil disobedience, boycotts, and peaceful protests. When Gandhi came back to India, he quickly started using his ideas. He led many satyagrahas across the country, getting lots of people involved and challenging the British. The Champaran Satyagraha in 1917, where Gandhi helped indigo farmers fighting against unfair British planters, was his first big satyagraha in India. World War I changed things a lot in India. The war marked a significant shift in the political and social landscape of the country. Many Indians were hopeful that their contributions to the war effort would be recognized and rewarded. Indians helped a lot in the war, hoping they would get more control afterward. They believed that their loyalty and sacrifices would lead to greater autonomy and self-governance, but they were wrong. The British made the Rowlatt Act in 1919. This act was seen as a betrayal by many Indians who had expected reforms and more freedoms. This harsh law let the government put anyone in jail without a trial if they were suspected of being against the government. It was a draconian measure that stifled dissent and curtailed civil liberties. Everyone in India hated the Rowlatt Act. It sparked widespread anger and resentment across the country. People from all walks of life came together to protest against this unjust law. It felt like the British didn't care about the sacrifices Indians made during the war and were attacking their freedoms. The sense of betrayal was profound and widespread. Gandhi and other leaders called for a hartal, a day of protest against the act. This was a significant moment in the Indian independence movement, as it marked the beginning of mass civil disobedience. On April 13, 1919, something terrible happened in Amritsar, Punjab. A peaceful gathering at Jallianwala Bagh turned into a nightmare. General Dyer, a British officer, told his soldiers to shoot at a peaceful group of people without warning. This brutal act of violence shocked the nation and the world. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre killed hundreds and hurt thousands. It was a turning point in India's struggle for independence, galvanizing the movement and uniting people against colonial rule. Section 5, the Non-Cooperation Movement, A Nation Awakens. This chapter delves into a pivotal period in India's struggle for freedom, a time when the nation collectively rose against colonial rule. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre and the Rowlatt Act were a turning point. The brutal killing of hundreds of unarmed Indians by British troops in 1919 shocked the nation and ignited widespread outrage. The Rowlatt Act, which allowed the British to imprison Indians without trial, further fueled the fire of dissent. Gandhi, who first wanted more control within the British Empire, now wanted complete independence. His vision for a free India began to take shape, and he emerged as a central figure in the independence movement. In 1920, Gandhi started the Non-Cooperation Movement. This was a mass protest against British rule, urging Indians to withdraw their cooperation from the colonial government. This movement asked everyone in India to boycott British goods and not work with the British government. It was a call to action for every Indian to take a stand against the injustices of colonial rule. Gandhi's call for peaceful resistance was really popular with millions of Indians who wanted freedom. His message of non-violence and civil disobedience resonated deeply with the masses. The non-cooperation movement had tons of people participating from all parts of Indian society. Students left school, showing their commitment to the cause and their desire for a free India. Lawyers didn't go to court, refusing to participate in a system they saw as unjust and oppressive. And workers went on strike, halting production and demonstrating their power and solidarity. The movement showed the British how strong the people were and how united they had become in their quest for independence. But Gandhi stopped it in 1922 after violence in Chowri Chowra, Uttar Pradesh. The incident where a mob killed police officers went against his principles of non-violence. Even though it stopped, the non-cooperation movement made a big impact on India. It united the country in a common cause and laid the foundation for future struggles that eventually led to independence in 1947. Section 6, the SALT, Satyagraha and civil disobedience challenging the empire. After the non-cooperation movement, the push for independence, or Purna Swaraj, got stronger. Gandhi, after thinking and planning, started another big movement. The Salt Satyagraha in 1930 was a really smart move by Gandhi. It focused on the salt tax, a tax everyone in India hated. Gandhi decided to break the salt law by marching to Dandi and making salt from seawater. This caught everyone's attention. The Salt March was a huge moment in India's fight for freedom. The Salt Satyagraha started the civil disobedience movement, a bigger campaign of peaceful resistance. Millions of Indians joined, breaking British laws and boycotting British goods. Section 7. The Quit India movement, the final push for freedom. World War II, which started in 1939, was important for the Indian nationalist movement. The British wanted India's help in the war, but the Indian National Congress, led by Gandhi, wouldn't help without a promise of independence. In August 1942, Gandhi said, "Quit India" in Mumbai. The Quit India movement, also called the August Kranti, wanted the British to leave India right away. Lots of Indians agreed with Gandhi. The Quit India movement saw many protests and strikes against British rule. The British fought back by arresting thousands of Congress leaders, including Gandhi. Even though the British were harsh, the Quit India movement showed that Indians really wanted independence. Section 8, Independence and its Aftermath, A New Dawn. The end of World War II in 1945 meant the British Empire was ending. The Labour Party in Britain understood India's desire for freedom. After lots of talking, India finally became independent on August 15, 1947. But the joy of independence came with the sad partition of the country. British India was split into India and Pakistan. The partition caused many people to move, with lots of violence and sadness. Even with these problems, India started its journey as a free country with hope. The new government, led by Jawaharlal Nehru, created a democratic constitution and wanted to build a modern, secular and socialist India. Section 9. Conclusion: the legacy of nationalism. The story of nationalism in India shows how much people want freedom. It's a story of bravery, sacrifice and never giving up. The movement, which lasted many years and involved millions of Indians, showed the power of unity and believing in your right to freedom. The Indian nationalist movement continues to inspire people in India and around the world. The ideas of democracy, secularism and social justice are still really important to India. India's fight for independence gave hope to other countries ruled by empires, showing that freedom was possible through peaceful ways. Gandhi's idea of Satyagraha has been used in movements against racism, injustice and oppression all over the world.